Welcome to the Inside Scoop. We are live from Nashville, Tennessee. Today is Sunday, September 28th, and I am your host, Josh Newberg. Week 5 was a tough one if you are a top 10 team. Well, I take that back, unless you're Oregon, Ohio State, or Texas A&M, but there was a lot of carnage in the top 10 this week as FSU, Penn State, Georgia, all fall in the same weekend. We're going to talk about how all this impacts recruiting because the rumors are starting to swirl, and we got the latest updates here on the Inside Scoop. But before we get started, make sure you guys hit subscribe. If you've watched one of these shows this offseason, it is only heating up further, so jump on board and hit subscribe. All right, so today's episode, we're going to talk Texas A&M, Georgia, Ole Miss, and Oregon. Big show, lots of action. Let's get to it. Let's talk some Texas A&M recruiting because the Aggies, they won 16-10 in an absolute thriller. And hey, when it comes down to these SEC matchups, you just got to win. After all the carnage that we saw in the top 10, we know winning matters. And Aggies, they are 4-0 for the first time since 2016. See, Mike? We do talk about that. So Auburn comes to College Station. They cannot beat them. We're going to talk about the recruiting impact on some of A&M's top targets. But before we get started, Aggie fans, do me a favor real quick. Hit subscribe. This is the best recruiting channel on all of YouTube, and we want Aggie fans to be a part of it. All right, let's bring in national analyst Sam Spiegelman. Let's talk about a major flip target on campus. Actually, but first, let's talk about a 2027 corner that committed before the game even began. Hakeem Frampton. What are the Aggies getting in this standout 2027 prospect?
Super athletic, long, rangy, speedy, built, all the traits that you want in your cornerback that can play inside. He can play outside. He spent some time at free safety. He's from California, which, Mike Elko and the staff love to recruit the West Coast. He's playing his junior season out there in Arkansas, which, again, has been a recruiting hotbed for these Aggies since Jimbo Fisher was there, again, under Coach Elko. Nice addition to a 2027 class that we expect to compete for the number one class in the country when it's all said and done.
Yeah, pretty interesting. He comes to campus. He must have had that. He must have known he was going to commit, right? You don't just show up and look at the pregame festivities and just figure, hey, I'm going to commit now. We don't see a lot of pregame commitments.
He came ready to drop that bomb. In the past, we've honestly heard a ton of whispers about this from kids that visit A&M all the time from across the Southeast and across Texas. And when they deliver in a big-time spot like that, Hakeem didn't hesitate to drop that commitment. I think he said he's been there 4 to 5 times. When he says when Mike Elko texts you, what else do you have to think about? The GM, Derek Miller, also played a huge role with this one.
That's great. All right, so maybe the headlining story of the weekend out of College Station was that Anthony Tank Jones, 5-star edge, committed to Oregon, was on campus. Maybe still is on campus for all I know. But do you think that Oregon has anything to worry about, or is he just getting around? Because he's been to Miami a couple times now. Now he's back at A&M. What do you think Oregon fans should think about this one?
Yeah, I think that Tank Jones's recruitment still has a couple more chapters ahead of it, and I don't expect Texas A&M to go anywhere. They haven't stopped recruiting him since his commitment to the Ducks, and they were one of the front runners next to Alabama and Auburn, dating back to his junior season. He's continued to come back to College Station. Obviously, high-level blue-chip recruits love Mike Elko, a defensive-minded coach. Not to mention Jay Bateman, their defensive coordinator, Sean Spencer, Tony Gerard-Eddy. They have multiple defensive line coaches over there in Aggie land, and they have attracted the best defensive linemen around the country for the past couple of cycles. That includes Tank Jones. I'm told where there is smoke, there is certainly fire. If I were to guess, I would expect the Aggies to be in this all the way through December. They have not taken their foot off the gas. His visit back to Texas A&M may be an indicator that he's coming back later this season. It's been an easy trip from Mobile, Alabama to College Station, and this staff hasn't taken their foot off the gas. I don't think they're going anywhere in this recruitment.
All right, let's talk about the number one defensive lineman in America in the 27 class, Jalen Brewster. He was on campus. And this is really important because Brewster is set to make his decision in 6 days this Saturday. this coming Saturday, so 6 days from now, Jalen Brewster will be announcing. What does this mean that he showed up in College Station a week prior to his decision?
Yeah, this is pretty significant. Jalen Brewster has called teams like Oregon the front runner in the past, but behind the scenes, programs like Oklahoma and Texas A&M have really been leading the charge for the number one defensive lineman in the country out of Cedar Hill, Texas. Both myself and Steve Wilfong have predictions in for Texas Tech. Another team that has come on very strong in this battle. We know the Cedar Hill High School connection with Joey McGuire, and we know that the Red Raiders are very well equipped to make this worth his while from an NIL standpoint. So does Texas A&M. They have money to go after the best players in the country. We just talked about how they're still in it for Anthony Tank Jones, one of the top edges in the 2026 class. Texas A&M felt that they were very much in the mix for Jalen Brewster leading into this visit, and there is still some confidence that they can get this done before his October 4th commitment date, which also will coincide with his birthday week. I'm not ready to move off my prediction for Texas Tech. They were on their bye week. They were continuing to recruit Jalen Brewster in his camp, but I'm not ruling out Texas A&M at any point in this race. After he commits, before he commits, this is going to be a battle between the Red Raiders, the Aggies, the Sooners, and a ton of other schools, including Ohio State, until Jalen Brewster signs next December.
Yeah. It's heating up, and Jalen Brewster was not the only number one player at his position. It was a ridiculous collection of talent. Number one interior offensive lineman Albert Simeon was there. Number one linebacker Cooper Witten was there. Number one corner Joshua Dobson was there. Number one offensive tackle Mark Matthews was there. And number one tight end Ahmad Hudson was there. Sam, coming out of this one, who is A&M in a great spot with? Inside Scoop fans, let's talk game time, because the NFL season is here and tickets aren't going to be easy to find, but you and your buddies need to find them. And getting deals on last-minute tickets can be frustrating when all you want is to be there for the moment that your team runs out onto the field. Well, thankfully, the Game Time app gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the hack for unlocking amazing ticket experience, and it only takes a few simple clicks. The app's easy to use, and the Game Time guarantee means that you can trust that you'll get 100% authentic tickets on time and at the best price. Plus, fees are always included, so what you see is what you pay. That's why I use the Game Time app. It's super simple and makes the experience of buying great seats a breeze. Also, one of the coolest features I've seen is the Game Time lowest price guarantee. It's where Game Time will credit you 100% of the difference to guarantee you're getting the lowest price if you find cheaper tickets elsewhere. All right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to download the Game Time app. You're going to create an account and then use promo code Inside Scoop. That's promo code Inside Scoop for $20 off your first purchase. It's INSIDESCOOP for $20 off Game Time. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed.
They're in a great spot with a lot of in-state and regional prospects, Josh. Let's start with the number one tight end in the country, five-star Ahmad Hudson. He camped at A&M over the summer, returned. Of course, the Aggies are battling Nebraska. They're battling LSU for this five-star tight end. I was told that this race got tightened significantly with his trip back, and he's expected back later this season. There's a lot of confidence in and around College Station with Albert Simeon, the number one interior offensive lineman in the country for next year. Of course, he is also from Louisiana. We know how hard the Aggies came for Lamar Brown last year, and they feel equally as confident about their long-term chances of bringing Albert Simeon to the station when it's all said and done. I could say that the Aggies are probably the leader for Caden McCarty, a Rivals 300 edge from Houston, and they took a major step forward in the recruitment of Julian Caldwell, blue chip top 100 wide receiver from Argyle, Texas. Never before have they been mentioned in that lead group with Texas and Oregon and Texas Tech, and now you can say the Aggies are here to stay.
Absolutely. Aggie fans, talk to us. How are you guys feeling about the most recent win over Auburn, and who is your most important target in the 2027 cycle? Let me know. Comment section below. We got to talk a little Georgia recruiting. The Dogs, they fell 24-21 on Saturday night in Athens, but some of the most sought-after recruits in America were there to watch. We're going to talk with Dogs HQ recruiting analyst Jeremy Johnson. We're going to find out how the Bama game may have impacted recruiting. Now, before we get into it, you guys do me a favor, hit subscribe. Look, we're almost to 100K. You guys can help us out. Georgia fans, jump on board. All right, let's bring in Jeremy Johnson. You were lucky enough to be at this game, win or lose. It was an instant classic. What are recruits telling you about their experience?
Yeah, the atmosphere. I mean, you start talking about a night game in Athens. I mean, anywhere in the SEC, it's just like, man, it's that those fans get to sit around all day and tailgate, and it gets really loud. And you could just, I was down on the field before the game, and you could just like feel, all right, this is a little different than week one against Austin P. Um, well, Marshall, I guess, and then the next week against Austin P. There's a different vibe around the city of Athens as well. So that's kind of been the thing everyone has talked about just so far, is that, man, they just really love the atmosphere and being down there, kind of being in the middle of it.
Yeah. And, of course, the outcome wasn't what Georgia fans had hoped, but you can't take those memories of pregame and just the game going back and forth. Those are things that those recruits are going to remember. And, there was fireworks before the fourth quarter, but there was also fireworks on the recruiting trail before the game. Dogs landed 2 commitments, 2027 offensive lineman Kelsey Adams, the number 9 ranked offensive tackle in America, and another interior offensive lineman, Kyson Mallard. He's from Albany, Georgia. He goes 6'5", 310. Did they arrive? Do you think they arrived with the intention to commit, or did the atmosphere just get them going?
I think both probably had it in their hearts for a while. I've talked to Kelsey Adams probably 5 or 6 times already in his recruitment, just because he's a guy that's been on Georgia's radar so much. I think the first time I remember him camping is maybe 7th or 8th grade. So, Georgia's been one of the programs right there at the front for him. And he, I guess he just was like, this is the perfect moment to make my announcement. And then being there is just, I guess it all kind of came together. I really want to kind of catch up with him and see exactly what it was. And I think Kyson kind of was the same way. George has been on him for a while, and he's dealing with an injury right now, so he was out there on crutches and taking in the atmosphere. I'm just like, this dude, it must have been really what he was looking for, because he just was like, let's just do it.
Yeah,
there wasn't a whole lot of buzz around it. There wasn't a whole lot of lead up to it. I guess he just felt like, hey, why am I waiting on this? And for George, it's two big additions, just because the offensive line is a place where you can never have enough of these type of guys.
Yeah, and 2 spots are now filled on that offensive line. Georgia's is involved with some others. Maybe we'll see some more dominoes falling because of this. So spots are going quick in the Dogs 2027 class. Now we're going to talk about some of the top 2027 names on campus, but I saw you had an interview up on Dogs HQ with Jared Dowdy. Really interesting offensive lineman. About 6 weeks ago, he was committed to Georgia State. He reopened his recruitment, and everybody in America has jumped in this one. He recently narrowed it down to a top 5. Georgia is involved. Do you think Georgia's the team to beat? Inside Scoop fans, let's talk game time, because the MLB playoffs are starting and tickets aren't going to be easy to find, but you and your buddies need them. And getting deals on last-minute tickets can be frustrating when all you want to do is be there for the moment your team runs out onto the diamond. Well, thankfully, the Game Time app gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the hack for unlocking amazing ticket experiences, and it only takes a few simple clips. The app, it's easy to use, and Game Time guarantee means that you can trust you'll get 100% authentic tickets on time and at the best price. Plus, fees are always included, so what you see is what you pay. That's why I use the Game Time app. It's super simple, and it makes the experience of buying great seats a breeze. Also, one of the coolest features I've seen is the Game Time lowest price guarantee. It's where Game Time will credit you 100% of the difference to guarantee you're getting the lowest price if you find cheaper tickets elsewhere. All right, here's what we're going to do. You're going to download the Game Time app. You're going to create an account. Use promo code INSIDESCOOP. That's promo code INSIDESCOOP for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's INSIDESCOOP for $20 off Game Time. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed.
I think they probably were at one point. I think it's definitely more of an open discussion at this point. Alabama was a big offer for him. I know he has some real interest in that program. Missouri seems to have his attention as well, but I think Georgia getting him on campus as much as they have is a plus,
Yeah.
just because he's so close. I know he wants to kind of stay, near home, and Georgia was kind of the program that kicked off this whole thing. They had him on campus and they offered it, and literally, like you said, every program in America said, "Wait, there's a guy that's 6'6", 280 pounds that can play left tackle, is in the state of Georgia, and we haven't really paid him any attention. Let's in here." So that's kind of what happened, and I think that gives Georgia an opportunity to kind of set the pace there. We'll see how these next couple of weeks of visits goes for him once he gets to Alabama, once he gets to Auburn, and I know he'll be back at Georgia for an official visit on I think the 15th. So it's a battle, and it's going to be, and I think it's going to be all the way up until the end. But I do think Georgia has he told me they're top 4, which is generous considering there's only 6 teams that he did a top 6, but I think they're a little higher than that. But
Yeah.
It's shaping up to be an Alabama and Georgia battle, and I'm interested to see kind of what happens over the next maybe 4 weeks with him.
Uh-huh. It's going to be interesting, going to be heated. Yeah, he's got a couple visits planned. We'll see what happens. But interesting that you noted kind of you kind of make it seem like maybe Georgia Alabama battle here for Dowdy.
Yeah, that's kind of where I feel. I feel like when Alabama offered, that kind of shifted things a little bit. It's like, okay, well, let me actually look at this. I think Missouri had his attention because they've been building a relationship with him. I mean, we talked about the Georgia offer kind of starting off his recruitment, but Missouri was kind of in there talking to him and kind of building that relationship before any of these programs were. So they kind of got a head start there, but obviously he has some big options and he has a big opportunity, especially with, I think, numbers and, kind of looking around the class. I mean, Georgia has Ekene Oboko, and they took 2 guys last year as well. So it's like, all right, where does he kind of fit numbers wise at Georgia? I mean, just with if he's trying to get on the field earlier in his career, I mean that definitely probably plays a part for him. I haven't asked him about that, but I'm just kind of wondering out loud just how much those type things play into it for him.
All right, let's talk about some of these big-time 2027 names on campus. David D.J. Jacobs was one, safety K.J. Caldwell, offensive tackle Joshua Sam Appel. So many. Who were some of the more important names that you recognized on the sidelines when it comes to Georgia 2027 recruiting?
Yeah, I think you named D.J. Jacobs. That was one of the guys. I mean, I think this class in Georgia with the edges, they had, obviously, the Damian Guyton's the number 1 recruit in the, rankings for Rivals. So
was he there?
He was not there, but him and DJ Jacobs have been highly targeted by Georgia. So now that they've missed on LaDamian, I mean, that even makes DJ that much more important just because they can't miss on both of these guys in state, considering they only have taken one guy and gotten one guy in the class of 2026 in Kamar Brooks. So you try to get as many of these impact guys as you can at that edge position, especially when they're right there in your state. And DJ Jacobs is a legacy. His dad played for Georgia. He has a younger brother who's also being recruited by Georgia. And, he's a Roswell guy. So that's an hour and 20 minutes up the road from Athens. So that matters. And I think, Georgia has to make sure that they continue to prioritize him, and having him on campus for big games like that only can do more for them, just to be able to say, hey, this is what Georgia is about. You come here, this is what playing, you're going to play in these types of games pretty much every week, every other week, So I think he's probably the one that mattered the most. Kamari Dorsey is a highly rated 5-star. I think he's a 5-star safety from Hampton, Georgia. He's been a big-time target. Obviously, Georgia Tech's made a big impression on him, too. So having him on campus was huge. I'm trying to think of some of the Andrew Beard is a local guy. He plays right over here at Prince Avenue. It's about 20 minutes from campus. So he's a big target at the running back spot. His uncle is Garrison Hurst, who was a great running back for Georgia. So there's a lot of connections there. He's probably on campus literally every time something important happens at Georgia. Andrew Beard's probably there, and that kind of tells you what he thinks of that program. So they're going to have to fight to get him to land him and lock him up. But that's one where getting him on campus for these moments is big too, just like it is for Jacobs.
All right. Well, it was, like I said, it wasn't the outcome that Georgia fans desired, but these recruiting implications will go on. Georgia fans, talk to us. How are you feeling about some of these top 2027 targets? Who is your most important recruit on the board? Let us know. Comment section below. Let's talk some Ole Miss recruiting. Is Lane Kiffin got a signature win on Saturday night over LSU, 19-24, and it was rocking in Oxford. A pivotal SEC game, a huge SEC win. We're going to talk with Sam Spiegelman about how this win impacted Ole Miss recruiting. But before we do that, guys, do me a favor, hit subscribe to the Rivals Recruits channel. This is an exciting time for Ole Miss fans, and we are going to be talking Ole Miss recruiting all season long, so jump on board and hit subscribe. All right, let's bring in national analyst Sam Spiegelman, and we're going to talk flip targets. We're going to talk some top 2027 recruits on campus, but let's talk about Keegan Croucher, a top 10 quarterback in the 27 class, and right now, 5 of the top 10 quarterbacks in the 27 class are already committed. So Keegan Croucher is on the clock, essentially. The QB dominoes are falling. What are you hearing about Keegan Croucher's visit to Ole Miss?
Yeah, he had a chance to catch up with our colleague Steve Wilfong, and this was a game day visit that really moved the needle for Keegan Croucher. Like you said, a lot of the top 2027 quarterbacks are slowly coming off the board. We're seeing commitments week in and week out, especially as these visits go on. They go deeper into their recruitment. Here's what you need to know about Keegan Croucher. Penn State is one of the top contenders in the mix here, and he was not in State College for the whiteout game. Instead, he was in Oxford, and he raved about that visit to Steve Wilfong. I think Ole Miss has immense staying power in this recruitment. You look at the play of Ole Miss's backup quarterback is making plays and beating a ranked LSU team at home. Quarterbacks in particular, but all positions, love Lane Kiffin and Charlie Weiss Jr.'s offense. Keegan Croucher there with his family, with his older brother in town. I think the SEC Southern hospitality certainly rubbed off on the blue chip passer.
Yeah, what a time to make your first visit to Oxford, Mississippi for this one. So he undoubtedly is going to have a game to remember. If he never makes it back to Ole Miss, that will be one that he definitely remembers when it's time to make his decision. All right, so we could potentially see another quarterback, Kavian Bryant, coming off the board in the next 4 or 5 weeks. So, I mean, essentially, this is commit season for these 2027 QBs, right?
We're seeing it across the country. We already know Pop Houston committed to LSU and explored all of his final options leading into that decision earlier this month. We're seeing it time and time again. Kavian Bryant is flirting with a decision we're hearing close to Halloween. He just made a visit to Colorado, which followed visits to Florida State, to Texas Tech. He'll be at SMU next weekend. More in this NIL era where they're signing contracts to lock in their commitments. We're seeing quarterbacks rush to the table. If they're already leaning in that direction, they're going to lock in their spot, or they're going to do their homework like Keegan Croucher, like Kavian Bryant are doing right now, making these pivotal game day visits. And then when it's official visit time in the summer, they'll be recruiting the class around them.
Flip targets on campus included Dorian Barney, committed to Michigan. Micah Champ-Smith, committed to UCLA. T-Rod Richardson, committed to Oklahoma. Dylan Berryman, committed to Texas. And I want to ask you about Berryman. He's from Louisiana, so neighboring state. Is this one that Ole Miss might be able to pick off? Texas does have a loaded D-line class headlined by James J.J. Johnson. So is Berryman somebody that was at this game that we're looking at that maybe Ole Miss has a real shot at flipping?
If you would have asked me this a week ago or 2 weeks ago, I probably would have shrugged you off, Josh, and said, no, don't worry about it. But this was his second visit to Oxford in the last 3 weekends. Listen, he's been back to Austin a few times. Everything he's saying on the record is that his commitment to Texas is locked in. However, like you said, Texas has a boatload of blue chip defensive linemen that they're still recruiting and trying to hold on to their commitments. This is a moving subject that we're watching, Dylan Berryman has a fantastic relationship with Randall Joyner, Ole Miss's D-line coach, and their DC, Pete Golding, of course, is from Louisiana and has poached a ton of talent from the boot over the last half decade or so on Lane Kiffin's staff. I was told, again, not to pay attention. He is not a flip target leading into this weekend, but since those whispers have quieted down, and he is someone that we're paying attention to as the season goes on.
All right. We'll keep tracking that one. Now, one of the top pass catchers in the 2027 class, Easton Royal, was there. He's the number 2 ranked wide receiver in America. You were able to catch up with him. What was his experience like?
Yeah, Ole Miss is not going anywhere in this recruitment. First of all, the assistant director of player personnel, Jeremy Singleton, is a Brother Martin High School alum where Easton Royal currently attends. Patrick Carter, Easton has called one of the strongest relationships in his recruitment. He was last year when he was in Oxford, it was for the win over Georgia. This year, it's for the win over LSU. There's something about when Easton Royal goes to the Grove, big things happen for the Rebels. That showed on offense. He said from the moment he stepped foot on campus, Lane Kiffin and that staff, those staffers that I just mentioned, were shadowing him, giving him the red carpet treatment in Oxford. Listen, LSU is involved here, Florida State, Texas, Ohio State, but I think after this visit, you can lock in a spot for Ole Miss at the final table with Easton Royal, the number 2 receiver in the 2027 class.
Yeah. Sam, you got a good pulse on recruiting. Does it feel like Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss have some real momentum right now on the trail? I mean, here's why. Not only did they get a big win, right, but there's some job openings, either open or coming open. And Lane Kiffin's name gets thrown around, but I think for maybe the first time in his tenure at Ole Miss, I think a lot of people are saying, hey, it makes more sense for Lane Kiffin to stay where he's at.
Well, we've seen the kind of roster he's been able to assemble in Oxford since he got there, not only from the high school recruiting ranks, keeping some of the best players in Mississippi in state, but also hitting the transfer portal as hard as Ole Miss has. He gets mentioned for these top jobs because he's an excellent coach. He's a fantastic recruiter. And what we saw this week leading up to on TV, the programs about how Ole Miss and Oxford has really saved Lane Kiffin. He's going to get mentioned for a lot of big time jobs. I think it's going to be really hard to pluck him out of Oxford, given the support and foundation he's built there, and kids want to come play for him. Top quarterbacks and offensive players want to come play for him. He's the flip wizard once it gets to this part of the calendar year. And I think this year, with this signature win in September, they might be doing things that they haven't done on the field in some time, and that will only help as they recruit these blue chippers in 2026 and on to 2027.
Absolutely. Ole Miss fans, talk to us. Let us know, were you at I want to talk to the Ole Miss fans that were in the stadium Saturday night for this win. How does it feel waking up Sunday morning a winner? Let us know. Comment section below. Let's talk some Ducks recruiting because Oregon won an instant classic, double overtime thriller in Happy Valley during a whiteout game. Definitely a signature win for Dan Lanning during his time at Oregon, but how does it impact recruiting? I got Justin Hopkins from Scoop Duck. We're going to go behind the scenes of this big win. But before we do, guys, do me a favor real quick. Hit subscribe to the Rivals Recruits channel. It's the best recruiting channel on all of YouTube. All right, let's bring in Ducks insider Justin Hopkins. And let's talk about that game for a minute because there were guys, including DeCorian Moore, Jordan Davison, Brandon Finney, De'Ari Hill. All these guys we were talking about last year in terms of like, where are they going to visit this weekend? How did they do in their high school game? But this weekend, all 4 of these guys made huge impacts on the field. Are you surprised to see this from recruits to impact players in 1 year?
Yeah, it's certainly something, right? And it's kind of a little bit of a trend in college football, right? We're hearing more and more about these true freshmen that are making impacts all over on top teams. But, when you look at Oregon with what Dan Lanning inherited when he showed up, he obviously leaned into the transfer portal a lot for the first couple of years. But you could see along with it, he was bringing in, classes behind it from the prep level. And this last year, you could see, hey, there was going to be a lot of guys that left the program and there was going to be openings all over. In fact, the entire secondary are all new players. So, there was a feeling there that a lot of these true freshmen would have a chance to contribute. Of course, everybody's going to look at DeCorian Moore and say, yeah, that guy's playing day one, right? We all knew that was coming. But to see, De'Ari Hill and Jordan Davison out there in a loaded running back room, arguably being the 2 best running backs on the day last night. I mean, that was certainly something. And Brandon Finney, my word, it's really hard to, qualify a game from a cornerback unless he's quote unquote either breaking up passes or making interceptions. But when you go back and look, and when they're afraid to throw at that true freshman cornerback, that usually says something pretty good about them too. So, those are some things that stood out. And those guys, it felt like they had a chance to contribute, but they're certainly going above and beyond with the way they played and playing in an environment like that. That is something pretty special, and really has to have Oregon fans excited for the future, seeing all these young players come in and step up on a big stage.
How about Decorian Moore, though, being the number one wide receiver? Yes, of course we all expected him to come in and make an impact, but just because the expectations are there, we've seen plenty of players not live up to those expectations. Decorian Moore, though, through and through, I mean, he has really played at a super high level. Is he only scratching the surface right now? Because he's played in, 4 or 5 college football games at this point?
You have to think so, right? I mean, he doesn't look like it at all. But I think one of my favorite things about Decorian Moore, and this isn't something you hear often, that guy blocks his ass off. He gets out there and he doesn't care if he's getting the ball or not. He makes sure that the guy in front of him is getting blocked. And, that's just really a culture thing for Oregon, right? Seeing a true freshman that's a receiver, you kind of expect those guys to say, hey, get me the ball or I'm not doing anything. And he's totally not that way. Of course, he makes the most with the ball. He's had some crazy contested catches so far in the first few games. And I think he's just scratching the surface. I think him and Dante Moore obviously are getting more and more comfortable. You're seeing Dante Moore ultimately kind of look in his direction first and then making, progressions based off of that. So it tells you they have total confidence in Decorian Moore.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing I can't recall, I don't believe that he's had any drop passes, or at least nothing that, like a catchable ball that he just dropped. So all those little things come into play. And just, I mean, gosh, he looks like, we saw it with Jeremiah Smith. We've seen it with Ryan Williams at Bama. He's certainly looking like he's very much in that mold as a true freshman receiver.
Yeah, and then, he was the number one wide receiver in America. He was number one when he committed to LSU. He was number one when he flipped to Oregon. But Jordan Davison was a highly ranked junior. He slipped in the rankings his senior year. I think he ended up being the 19th rated running back in the Rivals industry. And there was knocks on him, right? Is he big or is he too big to play running back? Is he too slow? But here we are watching this Penn State game. Not only is he running the football, he looked like a 3 or 4 year player back there. Is Jordan Davidson, is this a surprise to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't have this on my bingo card at all. His short yardage usage has been elite. I think last night was the first time he carried the ball, in a short yardage first down or like a goal line situation that he didn't convert. He was something like 10 for 10 leading up to that point, and he was still really good last night. But it's just crazy to see him out there. And there were certain points where you had him out there as a fullback, basically blocking for De'Aaron Hill. And you're like, man, that's an all true freshman backfield back there. And they're converting and doing it at a high clip. And you look at that, like the way he's being a selfless blocker, going out there for De'Aaron Hill, and, talking about Decorian Moore being a selfless blocker on the perimeter. Those are all culture things. And those are, things that, basically, if you don't hear about it, you don't think about it. Those are big things of what Dan Lanning has built at Oregon and kind of what this team is based on. Yeah. It's, a camaraderie and a brotherhood. And I know that's a recipe for a lot of top teams, but I think that's something that's really made this Oregon team kind of special this year, is the way everybody's bought in. These true freshmen going out there and getting their opportunities. And as you and I both know, Dan Lanning's going to lean real heavy into these true freshmen that are out there getting playing time as he continues to recruit throughout this calendar year.
Yeah, so speaking of recruiting throughout this calendar year, Oregon currently has the number 4 rated class in America. And guys that are taking weekend visits right now are going to be making an impact next year. Who on this commit list do you see making an instant impact when they arrive in Eugene?
Yeah, I think I'll lead off with Kendra Harrison. And the reason I do is because I don't think there's any chance Kenyon Sadiq comes back. He's probably going to be potentially a first rounder, if not that, a second rounder. He's really good. They're going to need a tight end in there. I think Kendra Harrison's going to find himself in a very fortuitous spot moving forward. I like Emmanuel Ahianacho. Right now Oregon's got 2 transfer portal tackles. They do need to get some offensive tackles in there and develop them. Might be tough to start him as a true freshman, but he's certainly going to contribute and play and probably find that rotation early. I also really like cornerback Davin Benjamin. I mean, that's a guy that's just really, really good. It's going to be tough once again because Oregon's got some younger corners right now, but they like to rotate 3 to 4 guys out there, so you can see Benjamin coming in and making waves there. Last one I'll go with, I know I'm hitting on all the highly ranked guys, but that's kind of what we do. Safety Jet Washington out of Bishop Gorman. I know he dropped a little bit in the latest rankings, but I don't think it was anything that was too alarming. There's certainly a guy there that Oregon feels very good about. Love his athleticism. And right now you've got Oregon using Dylan Thieneman, another transfer from Purdue, at a safety spot, probably going to go in the NFL draft. So you got to think somebody's going to slide right into that spot at a bare minimum. So those are the 4 guys that come off my mind immediately, at least that are currently committed to Oregon.
It's going to be fun to watch all these guys develop. All right, let's get into some flip talk a little bit here. Now, Anthony Tank Jones was on the road again. What do you make of him being at Texas A&M this weekend? It was Miami previous, but this weekend the Aggies got him on for a big SEC win.
Yeah, Oregon knew, when they earned his commitment that was just the beginning, right? And, it's great that they got the commitment, but he's a great player. And, everybody wants him. Bama, Texas A&M, Miami. Everybody's going to continue to recruit him. But the one thing I'll lean into, at least as far as Oregon is concerned, obviously when you see a product like that on the field on Saturday night in Penn State, that certainly helps your case. So if Oregon can continue to win and can continue to show that they're really strong on defense and make a case there, obviously if you're looking at your offensive players, you had a lot to showcase from Saturday night. But I do think the communication has remained incredibly strong with Tank Jones. He's been very good at communicating with Max Torres and myself on the Scoop Duck site, which is always nice when they know that you're an Oregon beat reporter, but they keep that communication open and strong. So once again, Oregon knew it was going to be a battle. As long as they keep winning, that should likely take care of itself. But you just never know in the NIL era anymore.
Okay, I'm going to ask you about who Oregon's going to flip. I mean, Oregon does have the momentum here, but we got to address Emmanuel Ihanacho because there was some buzz that he was going to be at the Penn State game. I don't know if he showed up, but you seem to have some intel there on what actually went down.
Yeah, it looks like he was at the game, but I believe he was there, as someone in the stands, not necessarily as a guest of Penn State, which we both know he probably could have been if he wanted to.
What do you mean? He probably could have been. Absolutely. Been, They would have rolled out the white carpet for him.
You want some free food? You want to hang out? Yeah. And what an environment. And the funny part is I had text a bunch of the Oregon commits last week asking them for a score prediction for the site. And Nacho was one of them that responded. Within 5 minutes of the end of the game, probably within 2 minutes, I was pretty dang close, wasn't I? Text from Nacho. So clearly he thought pretty highly of the game, reached right out and had something to say about it. And, if you're Oregon, I know they have plans to get him on campus at least two home games to finish this season. So again, probably looking at where he could fit in at Oregon and potentially see early playing time at offensive tackle probably helps there. But yeah, I mean, just like Tank, that's a guy that everybody wants, and he's earned the right to take some visits, right?
Yeah. All right. Enough about Oregon being on the defensive. We're talking about undefeated Duck team here going out on the trail. Not a ton of room left in this class, but if Oregon could, maybe take somebody off of somebody else's commit list, who are you watching?
Sorry, my dog's trying to make an appearance here, but no, there's a lot of names. And when you're winning like Oregon, go lay down.
We're a dog-friendly show here. So
I know she's a Great Dane, so all she has to do is put her face right there. Anyways, back to your question. Sorry. Oregon is in a great spot, right? I believe they're at 17 commits, and I think they really would prefer to sign 20 to 21 guys in this class. Obviously, you're going to make room for 5 stars. That's what everybody does. A couple names that I would probably single out at the moment. Linebacker Nick Abrams that Oregon was in the hunt for early on. Obviously, they've continued to recruit him. Linebacker is a position of need for the Ducks moving forward. Wide receiver, they do have Messiah Hampton and Jalen Lott committed, but Oregon was very hot and heavy with Chris Henry Jr. And Caden Dixon-Wyatt, obviously both committed to Ohio State, which is a wide receiver factory. So those might be tough to pull, but I know Oregon has not given up on either of those targets as well. Couple more just because it's West Coast. Tamohini Tupoi flip from Oregon to USC. I think Oregon's kept in communication. I don't know how far that's gone there. Another name worth watching because defensive line is another position. Last one I think I'll throw out for now. I would keep an eye on Cody Green. Obviously was committed to Oregon at one point, flipped to Washington. Washington's had a kind of an up and down season a little bit, but offensive tackle remains another big position of need for Oregon. They do have Nacho, but they would love to add a second guy in the class if it allows. With Dan Lanning winning and this big win over Saturday night, that's the momentum. Hopefully they can carry that into a few of these flip targets they have.
I think so. Oregon fans, what do you think? You guys are the real recruiting experts. Who do you think the Ducks, because we know there will be some flips, who do you guys think the Ducks flip down the stretch? Let me know. Comment section below.